I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I didn't know. It's very exciting. Congratulations. Babies are wonderful. When do you do?
May 30th.
Ooh, that's nice.
It's perfectly in line for chief retiring. And as soon as the fun transition stuff starts.
I had 3 in a row. 3 and 8. And I felt bad because I was gone on maternity leave all the time. But you know, I worked for 42 years and those 3 little.
Eat it up.
That's nice. All right. Well, good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Philomath Police Committee on this 13th day of February 2024. Those in attendance today are Councillor Crocker, Chris Workman, myself, Councillor Nielsen, Councillor Causey, Lieutenant Gursky, and Katie Miller. Pleased to glad that you're here. First order of business would be to approve the minutes. Councillor Causey, and all those in favor, please say aye. Turn some time over right away to Lieutenant Gursky.
All right. Do you mind if we go out of order and have Katie go first?
Oh, absolutely. We can have Katie go first. Absolutely.
Kind of about the book.
I just have like a little bit of stats. Most of the evidence destruction that we've done, Ken did all the groundwork, and then I just came in at the end and helped get it finished up. But our evidence destruction was for cases prior to 2020. I think the oldest thing that we destroyed was in like 2006, but the majority of it was kind of in that 2018, 2020 range. We sent a list to the DA's office. Out of that, 1,543 pieces of evidence are able to be destroyed that were approved by the DA's office. So about 52% of that total of evidence was able to be destroyed that we were ready to take to Covanta. Soon, we had $9,755.13 total cash that was deposited after there was a small portion that was found to be counterfeit, but that was the total that we were able to deposit from that. 29 weapons, accessories, and ammos were treated with Exact Edge Manufacturing for 12 pieces of 9mm target ammo, which is about 12,000 rounds for training. And overall, we freed up a bunch of space. We have like 50 to 60 bins, I think, that we freed up of space out in our evidence room and out in our Connex box.
I think it was
So
probably
it was very productive.
it's the largest destruction process that we've done in probably at least the last 15 years, if not longer. The evidence room looks really good. Tidy now.
It's getting pretty full there.
Getting pretty tight, yeah. And it's nice that we were able to, rather than selling the guns, we were able to trade those for training ammo. We have different firearms that are coming in, and so we're going to have to do quite a bit of training just to get everybody used to those new systems, and it's going to be a different caliber and things like that. So it'll be nice to be able to supplement that and not have to spend money on them, actually just trade forfeited guns for those.
For things that could not be destroyed, why couldn't they be destroyed?
So there were things that we had to retain, just like there's some cases that we're probably going to keep forever for like say murders or rapes or high priority crimes like that. So some things we were required to keep, and that was about, let's see, 676 pieces were ones that the DA said that we had to retain. There was about 750 that we didn't get an answer on, that potentially it might just be something that they're still pending and they just hadn't had an answer for us. So potentially on like, the next round, next year when we do our evidence, we'll get to it. But the 1,543 pieces were the only ones of the cases that were approved by the DA for us to destroy. We get that extra validation before we start taking anything to go be incinerated.
And what percentage of the training ammunition was able to be purchased from this? Like, does it provide half of our training ammunition? Does it provide a quarter of our training ammunition?
So I would say for this particular transaction that we made for 12,000 rounds of ammunition, that'll probably cover about a day to a day and a half, since we are going to be training on a new weapon system. It'll be a full day of training, which will probably be close to 1,000 rounds per officer, which sounds like a lot, but we really will only have about 8 to 10 hours of training time at the range, and that's to get fully acclimated with these new systems. I would say it probably about maybe 15%. If we were to do this on an average year, that number would be much higher. But since we are transitioning to a new system, different caliber, different sights, it's going to be a little bit more involved, and it's going to require a little bit more time on the range, and then additionally some more ammunition.
And why the new system?
That is becoming, with new technology, that's one of the new trends for law enforcement. They're going to an electronic sight. People seem to shoot a little bit better. Another reason is 40 caliber has kind of a snap or a pop when you shoot it, so the recoil is much greater than a 9mm. We're also finding that for some people that don't have as strong of a grip, 40 caliber, if you don't have a strong grip, then you'll have malfunctions where the slide will hold open and it will clog up or jam with another round, and then you've got to clear that malfunction. And so with the less recoil on a 9mm, you don't seem to have that, and you don't worry about those grip issues. So it'll be a little bit more reliable platform.
Yes, Counselor.
Evidence destruction, is that something that every officer knows how to do, or is that a specially trained thing? And you both have now been trained on this? Is that?
I have had a glimpse into it. She probably has more training than I do at this point. So this is, we try and do a destruction about once a year to every 2 years, depending on how much evidence we've seized over that. Retention standards, and then we'll go through and do a purge. But it's always better to have 2 people. It's easy to make an honest mistake where you're transposing numbers. So if you can have 2 people that are trained to do it, it's a much safer way to do things.
Yeah, the majority of the stuff was done by me, and Ken kind of got everything ready, and then it was mostly me assisting him with going through the bins of what's being destroyed, getting that taken out of our system, marked to be destroyed, and all of that. This year I've gone through training to get my certification for the evidence tech, and then I've also gone to an evidence tech conference because the goal is going to be for me to take over the evidence tech room once Ken's gone.
Is anybody else trained besides the 2 of you? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
So we're very strict with access to the evidence room, obviously. Have you been inside? Have you seen how?
I don't think I have.
Maybe if we have time at the end of this, you guys can come over and I can kind of show you what it looks like. They're slam lockers, and so they don't have any latches or anything on the outside from the officer's side. Once you pass through the evidence room door on the other side, that's where the latches are. And so once they place a piece of evidence in to be booked and they shut that locker, it's locked. They no longer have access to it. So they would have to either come to myself or Ken or Katie in order to get that released. So, which could mean they may need to analyze, let's say, a book, a cell phone, any number of documents, and then to write the report. But to maintain chain of custody, we're going to keep it in there so we can say that, when they go home at night or when they go home in the morning to go to bed, then it's safely in that evidence room and nobody else has access to it to tamper with it.
Handgun have a sight on it?
It does, yeah. And so these are iron sights where we just line up the dots, or you'll line up your sight picture, and that's how you would aim before you shoot that. Some of the newer systems have an electronic sight with just a red dot on the inside. They're a little bit more reliable. At nighttime, they're definitely that illuminated dot. So we're seeing a lot of advancement with technology these days, and it's coming in different. These have been the standard platform for.
To be a little less maintenance, a little bit more
They're
maintenance?
about the same. I mean, they still have to go through an annual inspection. We have armorers that go through and make sure all of the parts are functioning properly. They do a thorough deep clean after every training or every time they're used. Then we go through and we clean them. The sites have the newer sites that we're purchasing have a solar panel on top, and so they charge the battery with just ambient light, sunlight. Like I said, technology's
Even in
definitely
Oregon.
advancing.
Wow.
Oh, very cool. That's very cool. Oh, thank you, Katie. I appreciate that.
Yeah. There you go.
All right. Go. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you for doing all that extra training and
Yes.
a very valuable
Looking
thing.
forward to it. Yeah.
Take care.
A huge help with this destruction. Ken starts this usually 6 months up to Gavanna to be destroyed, and it's trying to sort. And we have 2 different systems, record keeping systems now. We've got the old justice report writing system, and then we also have the central square system. So we're working with 2 sets of documents and trying to figure out, what can be destroyed, sending those off to circuit court, municipal court, and then getting the authorization to go ahead and destroy certain items and which items need to be retained. The items that we retain typically go out to the Connex, so we make room for the next year or 2 at our office, so we're not trying to sort through that stuff, some of the older evidence in our facility here.
The 2 systems, is that going to meld into one system as it's updated?
It will.
Always have 2.
We're going to have to retain the evidence logs for the justice system, just because we implemented that one in 04. We also migrated data from, I believe, back to the late 90s. I think there's some cases from 98 and 99 that are in there. So some of them have retention settings on them where murders, rapes, some of the unsolved felony crimes or person crimes will have to maintain that DNA evidence. A lot of that has to be retained, and so we're just going to have to keep it. But we just try and whittle it down as much as we can to just keep the minimum.
Chief Rubin gave me a tour of the evidence room when I had the tour of the building, and it's pretty intense to be in there and see that the record keeping is just amazing.
It has to be, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness, it's just like double and triple checks everything, and
You have to, especially when you've only got one person. And then we do a spot audit for accreditation purposes. We do a spot check where we'll invite another agency to come in once a year. We'll print out anywhere from 100 to 200 items, and then we'll say, okay, we've got to put hands on. They get to pick which 10 or 20 items, and you've got to go find those in the evidence room and then check them off. And then they prepare a memo for us that we put in the accreditation files. So.
Good. And I assume you've done great.
Yeah, we haven't had any issues at all with that. And so we have been to other departments where we have seen major problems, but we'll schedule a wall-to-wall audit once Ken retires, and then Katie and I will go through and we will touch every piece of evidence in both the Connex, our offsite location, and the onsite location to make sure that everything's there, and then write Chris with a memo as well, just letting him know what we find.
thank you. Go to staffing update.
All right, so we talked a little bit about that last night with regards to kind of restructuring our command staff. I think it makes sense to, currently we don't have officers that hold the certifications for lieutenant. Year period, that's what DPSST outlines, which would be their advanced certificate and then their supervisory certificate. Night, additional coverage on graveyard right now. If the graveyard officer on duty has questions, they're usually calling me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Depending on how critical those questions are, sometimes they'll try and wait until 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, so they're not waking me up at 2 or 3. But really, it would give them direct access to a supervisor. And then not only that, I think it will also kind of create kind of a team environment that we're lacking right now, where each sergeant is responsible for their team, a day shift and night shift team. Day shift sergeant and night shift sergeants will be approving their team's reports. And then not only that, they'll be working alongside several of those officers. how our schedule works now, we've got 4 on and 4 off. As you know, we'd probably set them as an overlap, so they would overlap 2 nights with each one of them. And so it provides some additional structure, and then they'd be on call like I am, just for any graveyard calls. Most of our officers keep that graveyard schedule, and so they're staying up late at night and sleeping during the day, just because it's difficult to flip flop from a day shift to a graveyard just every 4 days. And then the same thing with the day shift sergeant; he would be responsible for any calls that come in, or questions that come in during the day.
You mentioned a 2-year certification or training, whatever that was.
So they have to hold a certain level of certification in order to be a supervisor, and they have to go through some additional training at the academy. And so that's got to be completed within 2 years of their promotion.
They would become a sergeant and then begin the training.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the 2 years then to complete
Yep.
it.
And like Benton County just did a promotional process about a year ago where they promoted 3 sergeants at the same time. And so they give you time for that training because you're going to lose them for a couple weeks to the academy. And so when you've got staffing needs and minimum staffing levels that you've got to maintain, then it's difficult to lose all 3 at once and then put them through that promotional process or let them achieve that rank after the training. And they're still with, even when I was a young supervisor here, I was calling Ken all the time just because there were questions that were coming up and I just didn't have any exposure to it. I mean, a lot of times from the outside looking in, when I was a patrol officer, I was thinking, oh gosh, it's easy to be a sergeant. I can't wait to be a sergeant. And then you get into that role and you realize there's a lot more to it. And you're making critical decisions that they're important, and it's one of those things where you open yourself up to risk and liability, and case laws forever changing, and so there's a lot to it. And so in the beginning, there's going to be a lot of supervision, and then also a lot of training.
And do we have an individual on each days and nights that's willing to make that advancement?
We have at least 3 that I know of right now that would be eligible and that they could receive their certificates based on training hours, and then
And if we do one for the morning, one for they can't work 7 days a week. So is it you that relieves them or gives them time off, or how does that happen?
so I'll be there Monday through Friday, and then I'm available like I am now, 24/7, depending on what comes up. And then if need be, then the graveyard sergeant can approve. He's on vacation or in his absence. Likewise with the graveyard sergeant. I mean, right now we only have 1, and so I ended up approving all of the reports, and I field all of the phone calls, or come in when I need to come in if they've got something critical that's happening. So.
And sorry for asking this. Are you on a salary or a by hour, and do you get paid for all that extra time that you are answering the phone and doing stuff?
I don't charge for phone calls. It's just part of the job. I'm doing it from home, and it's really not more than about 10 or 15 minutes typically. If it's something where I'm going to get more than 2 or 3 phone calls, I just come in, and that way they've got the support that they need, and I can guide them through whatever problems they're having or whatever the investigation needs.
The code officer. We talked about
Code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer, correct? Could you discuss that and what we're going to be, or are we through with this? Are there more questions on sergeants? Do you have information about what we're going to be doing for the code enforcement?
Yeah, so we'll kind of fold that into budget/staffing.
Okay.
One of the things that I think we're kind of at a point right now where we're ready for adding an additional officer, that the budget allows for that. One of the reasons I think is the most critical reason is officer safety. I went through and crunched the numbers for 2023, and granted that was kind of an odd year because of staffing. We were low, but out of 730 total shifts in 2023, 635 of those shifts officers worked alone. Weeks where we had county cover and graveyard for us because we had one of our officers was out with an injury, had surgery, and then the other one was out on baby leave. The other thing and that's difficult, especially with uses of force. We had one of the officers that got into a pretty significant use of force where he needed to use a taser. He had a subject that he was trying to arrest, take into custody, tried to get him out of the patrol car. That suspect ended up grabbing him around the neck and they got into this altercation. He was able to break contact with them, call for a cover unit, but ultimately needed to use his taser. A lot of times Benton County regionally, they're pretty close. We have them out on Highway 20, but if they're tied up on calls or at minimum staffing, or Corvallis has got something going on, then that's a long 7-minute code run from Corvallis to here when you're actively fighting with a subject and you're the only one.
Yes.
The other thing that I'm hearing from especially the graveyard guys is it definitely hurts morale not having another teammate on. I know when I was working swing shift, when we were working 8-hour shifts, we had a cover shift or a relief shift that was 6:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. And having that extra person on would allow you to work projects and things like that. Or we also have a database that we have different trainings that we can do. So if I assign training to somebody and it's a video that they need to watch, if they've got somebody else on duty, they can start that training and then complete it on duty. Not have to worry about a call coming in or not working patrol. It also frees up time for us to send them to training, which this last probably 2 years with the staffing shortage, we just haven't been able to send them to extra training. I mean, I've got a list of our we've got probably 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, at least over 20 different bullets, and those are just state and accreditation mandates. That's not above and beyond sending them to advanced training, whether it has to do with impaired drivers or firearms training. We need instructors in other disciplines. We've lost some of them over the years. We don't have a use of force instructor right now. We don't have a defensive tactics instructor, so another officer would definitely allow us to send some more folks out and get some trainers in-house so we don't have to rely on other agencies to help out with that.
And your timeline for this other officer, what are you looking at for this additional officer hire?
Well, if there's money in the budget for it and we get council approval, I think is, next budget cycle. And then to talk about the code enforcement, I think with 3 new officers, that's one of the things that we'll implement in their training regiment while they're on FTEP is they're going to be responsible for those. And I don't see them taking all that much time when we're fully staffed. It was certainly helpful to have Coulter. He did a great job. He was very well organized and very thorough. He was very professional. We didn't receive any complaints while he was doing that. And sometimes those are sensitive things. I mean, sometimes people don't have the money to clean those things up. We targeted some of those places when we had our spring cleanup or prior to that, so that was an option for them. But I think this is things that we can handle on a regular basis when we're fully staffed. We do have, we're going to have child abuse cases that come up, and we're going to have critical incidents and things like that, and we'll do a good job of triaging those as they come in.
I think if money wasn't an issue, we'd probably still want to keep that position and have somebody part-time just to do that, but part of that's going to get rolled into this new officer position. Just budgetarily, we're just going to need that funding for that, and so we're going to rely on some of the newer officers to pick that up for a while. And we're looking out 3, 4, 5 years, and maybe something that the position's still there, we'd be able to go ahead and recruit again. But for now, as we're transitioning and trying to staff up a little bit, it makes sense to me to roll that into the budget for this year and not take such a hit. I mean, a new officer is going to be hitting the budget, so you'll see it. Again, depending on the discussion here today, we're kind of looking for your guidance and your direction on and your thoughts on a new officer. And Lieutenant's done a great job of expressing the need from a staffing standpoint. I hope, like me, what you didn't hear is crime's gotten out of hand. There's too much drugs going on. We're not doing enough traffic control. It's really not that. It's just we have staffing issues that are associated with time off and sick leave and vacation leave and additional training and all of these additional mandates that kind of lunged through doing what they're doing for a number of years, always thinking that we were going to get this stable workforce where everybody's available all the time. Have some turnover, and I don't see us getting away from that. I think as much as I would love to say we're gonna hire 7 great officers that are just gonna stay with us forever. It's just not reality. We're gonna have turnover. We're always gonna have new officers. We're always gonna have senior officers leaving. And that's just gonna be the flow, and having that one additional officer to help with those transitions is really a necessity at this point, so that our officers can be safe. Again, I don't look at it as this, the community needs us, so the community is safe. It needs us so that we have a decrease in our traffic issues. It really is about officer safety and allowing officers to get their job done more effectively, which they're struggling right now. You know, it's tough to have traffic enforcement be a priority when you've got one officer on and you've got 3 calls for service. You're not doing traffic enforcement, right? You're out doing your calls for duty, and that's all you have time to do. You write up your reports, and your shift's over. That was it. And so, you know, with bringing another officer in, the goal with part of that will be on the thoroughfares, checking the back streets for people cruising through, trying to get around town. That's just something that's really been lacking, and we're seeing that. So it's the biggest complaint we get. People aren't complaining that we're not safe, but we get complaints about traffic continually. We saw it in the survey results. The construction helps slow things a little bit, but I do think having more of a presence in traffic enforcement, and getting that reputation again for being a place where the officers are going to be out and be available, it's not a luxury that we've had, unfortunately, but it's something we need to get back to.
Councilor Crocker.
We've got 3 officers in training,
Yes.
and when they are done and get back, are we fully staffed according to the positions that we have to offer at this point?
Will be, yeah.
And the need is still great that we need to add another one. Yes.
Yes.
I'm hearing that, and that's fine with me. I think that's a good thing to do, but without those 3, we're really not fully staffed right now. And it seems like it's been that way for quite a while, right?
Yeah, and it takes quite a bit of time. In fact, I brought, if you guys want to take a look at one of our schedules, that line 5 and 6 are canonized positions on here. And this shows you where the overlap is. And if you take a look at towards the end of this is August of 2023. If you take a look at the end, there's one of the graveyard officers that had taken 2 vacation days in conjunction with his 4 days off to give him a 6-day weekend or stint of time off. And so if you look, you've got this officer down here. You can see that I'll pass this around, but he worked 6 consecutive shifts in a row with 2 days off and then came back in to work 4, and they're 12-hour shifts. And so they're mindful of that. They don't just shotgun vacation requests, and a lot of times these guys are working when they're sick, where they would normally take the day off, but they don't want to inconvenience one of their other coworkers and have them lose a day off to come in and work for them last minute. So it's tough. I mean, it's really tough, I think, on morale for them. I mean, they do a good job, and they've done a great job of managing that and making those
You
sacrifices.
deserve to have some time off, and that's, or be sick, whatever.
And ultimately,
I understand how that doesn't, if they're gone, that's a big percentage of them.
And if they're working, if we've got a graveyard officer that's tied up on a DUI for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, then they're not available for a domestic that comes out because they've got a prisoner in custody that they have to process out. And so then we're waiting for either Benton County to respond or Corvallis to respond to that call. And it's busy they are. Friday night or Saturday night, they may be busy with their own calls, so.
And we'll still have some of that even with an additional officer. You're still going to have some of that, but it'll be reduced significantly. I mean, having another full-time officer will make a huge difference in this, but it's still not going to be, we have no expectation that we are the size of Corvallis and we're going to be, more than 2 guys on at any given time. That's just not the reality of it, but the less we can do that, the better. And again, we're looking at the funding, we're looking at the general fund, we're looking at where revenues are. So there is a budgetary component to this. It's not inexpensive to bring on additional staff, and it's a permanent thing, right? We're not going to bring them on for a couple of years and then drop it down. So there's a lot of sensitivity around bringing somebody on. But I feel like budget wise, we're in a good position that we can afford to do it this year going forward based on where the tax base is today.
And this will reduce the number of shifts that officers would then work alone.
Yeah,
So having that other officer would reduce that number of alone shifts.
yeah, exactly. So what typically we will run with 3 on day shifts, so that gives 2 days of overlap, and then there's gonna, well, it'd be 4 days of overlap, and then 4 days where you've got 2 officers that are working 2 days by themselves. When we're fully staffed, we like to have 4 on graveyards, so we've got 2 teams of 2, and so they've always got a cover officer on shift. And so that's what would be even better if we could do that on day shift, because then we can also assign extra duties, whether it's ordinance enforcement during the springtime. I can also assign for traffic enforcement, on busy weekends, holidays, things like that. So we've got some more latitude on day shift. But really, I think it's a safety thing for both of the shifts, making sure that they've got adequate cover and they're not relying on other agencies. We just don't know where they're going to be and what their call load's going to be like.
Is Benton County fully staffed?
What's up?
Is Benton County Sheriff Department fully staffed?
They are really close. I believe they have 2 or 3 in training right now, but they are very close.
How many officers do they have at one time on duty?
It depends. They run, so right now they're running 3 shifts and they have a total. With command staff and with supervisors, they're probably running approximately 5, about 4 or 5 a shift.
They're covering all of Benton County, like Monroe and all that. Yeah.
So, Chris, do you need a recommendation from police committee for the council to consider?
No,
What
it's
do you
really
need
just
from
at
us?
staff level at this point, so it's
Okay.
just feedback for us as staff's putting together. We're working with Lieutenant Gursky and with Ken and working with Mike as we're putting the budget together. We're just looking for absolutely not, we're good, or this makes sense, if we've got the funding, let's put it in there. So we're just looking for guidance at the staff level at this point. It's a change. We don't make commitments, I know when the apartments came in several years ago, it was like, hey, we're not gonna have to increase staff because of the apartments. That's still a true statement, right? Again, this isn't based on additional crime or additional workload. This is just based on the reality that people need time off, and our guys, I think, have tolerated a lot of overtime and extra time and all that for a long time. And now that we have a little bit better situation financially, because the tax base has come up some, it's a priority for us now to put that extra body in there.
Now, may I ask another question? When I did the tour, Chief Ribbon mentioned about the equipment, like the vehicles, that the longevity of the vehicles isn't what we would think in the normal pace of life for the average. How are we doing equipment-wise as far as vehicles in the department? Are
We're
we?
getting really close. This week I will order another patrol car. I've been working with the ship person up out at Landmark, and Ford is going to be retooling next year, and they're going to overhaul their police vehicle platform. And so right now they're taking orders and they're going to run a limited production run of just gas powered vehicles. And that's probably going to be about 4 to 5 months. And so if you get your order in, then you'll see that within a year to 18 months probably. And then after that, they're going to retool their factory for doing hybrids. So they're going to do a little bit longer run of hybrids, and then they will shut things down and completely retool for the next year. And so those 25/26 vehicles are not going to be available for quite some time. But we have one vehicle that is so close. I'm waiting for one piece of equipment. It's a printer mount, and then it'll be operational. So we'll have that one hit the streets. In the meantime, one of our vehicles has racked up a lot of miles. And so what we'll do with our vehicle assignments is, as we bring these new cars online, we'll probably just dedicate that one car to one person for that time. And so we'll kind of even things out a little bit.
But those are in the capital improvement plan, right?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll be seeing updated figures there. We're not getting police cars for 52,000 anymore. They've gone up considerably. So just like your own vehicle has gone up, our police fleet vehicles have gone up as well. So we'll be updating those numbers, but it's accounted for in there. we'll just see some increases, so.
Can you use a hybrid for a police car? And is there enough power and,
Corvallis uses them, but they're expensive and they're hard to get. And we've had a difficult enough time getting just the regular V6 naturally aspirated vehicles. And the last one took, what, 18 months, I think? And I'm still waiting for the upfitting. I mean, it's still not ready. I mean, I've got all the decals on it. I've got the light bar on it. And I'm still waiting for one piece of equipment. And I think that is a 2022 model year, and it's never been used on patrol.
And when is that piece due to come in? Piece that you're
Yes.
using?
So I'm expecting to see it within a week or two.
Oh, okay.
As soon as I get it, I've got Benton County Shops who does some of our maintenance for us. They've agreed to put it in and put a rush on it. And get that printer installed and get it on the street. So
You're talking about before the end of this year?
absolutely, yeah.
Question about the new armaments that you described and the training that you described, is all of that in our budget for this year?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we will end up training some of our old ammunition to this same company, and we'll end up getting the different caliber, which will help quite a bit. I know about 2 years ago, there were a number of agencies across the state decided to go with 9mm. We weren't in a position to buy new guns yet, and these were still, at that time, were still fairly new and had some life left in them. So we waited a couple of years, and now we're transitioning as well.
to the cars? Because that fascinates me. So you pre-assign which car each officer will be driving? And is there any consistency so they get used to the car, or do they just one day to the next will be different?
We tried, but I had all three of those vehicles in for unexpected maintenance problems last week. I cycled every one of our cars through there except for mine and Kent's. So all of our patrol cars went through for, like I said, unexpected maintenance. And sometimes we'll have a vehicle that goes down, parts aren't available. I had one of our vehicles in there for 4 days waiting on parts. And it's not uncommon to have them sit for a week, week and a half.
Anything else we need to, counselors? Anything else that need to be discussed? Lieutenant, anything else?
The only other thing I had, let's see, I've got radio costs went up, and we also have, so we've got two different systems. We used to run on VHF only. There was a mandate to go to 700 megahertz, which was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. We have all switched over. The dispatch center has switched over. However, when that system goes down, we need to have a redundant system in the car, which would be that VHS system. We've been running these VHF radios in our vehicles since before I got here in 2004, and so they're at end of life. They're no longer serviceable. They are come out with a tri-band radio which will do all of those frequencies in one unit, so you don't have to put two units. We've been recycling them, so they've been through probably half a dozen patrol cars at this point. So if one of those goes bad, we have to take that system out, and then we have to try and find something else to purchase. The problem with that is that if we purchase a replacement, we're sinking a couple $1,000s into something that it's only our redundant system. Whereas the tri-band newer radios will handle all of those frequencies. So it's just a push of a button or flip of a switch, and you can go back and forth between VHF and the 700 megahertz. I just ordered one to replace the one that Benton County let us use. We had another issue trying to expedite that patrol car I was talking about that's not yet online. It's a significant delay, and so Benton County had about 30 of those that they're sitting on that are just in boxes, and they offered to give us one, and then I ordered one to replace that one. The cost has increased. It was $8,231. I talked with them about this next year moving forward, and they said that price increase took place in April of last year, and Motorola is not forecasting any new price increases for this next 24-25 fiscal year. So that price is still good.
And you're talking about re-equipping each of the vehicles then with,
No, so our newest vehicle has one.
Okay.
And so as we build new vehicles, then we would replace it with this system. So we would remove those old systems out of there. working. I have, I think, 1 or 2 spares to replace the VHF radios if they do go out, and they're the same platform, but that's about it, 1 or 2.
And these new tri-band radios should have some longevity.
Yeah, so I mean, to speak to Motorola's reliability and their warranty and quality, like I said, those VHF ones have been in our cars since before 2004 when I started, so they're at least 20 years old, and I would guess they're probably close to 24 years old.
Good. We got our money's worth.
Indeed.
One more thing
Yes.
that I thought we were gonna discuss, but then that was January. School shooting drills. Just to let you know, he ran one, the last, was it 15 years ago or 10 years ago? I don't know.
Yeah,
A while. And I was in on that, and I was very, very impressed with not only the drill, but the things that we found out, that somebody could just walk in those front rooms, and the office was exposed, and so much change happened. There were security doors and covers and all sorts of things added, which is fabulous. Now, I don't think there's a ton of people that work there that have done that recently because it's been so long. I mean, they do the lockdowns, but that's not the same. I would love to see us try to schedule another one, and see what else we can learn from that. It just was invaluable to make our students and our staff safer. And
I think also, I was an educator doing that as well, and there's a sense of confidence that you, after having gone through the drill, you kind of feel more prepared if something were to, okay, it wouldn't just be, what am I supposed to do, you know, okay, now we have this procedure in order, I know what I'm doing, and a sense of confidence, knowing that you can make good choices and feel trained.
So one of the reasons that you saw a lot of those drills, those full-scale drills back 10, 15 years ago, that was right when we were starting to see a huge uptick in school shootings. And what we found is collectively we didn't have a plan with fire, with the school,
No, yeah.
law enforcement, and with the hospitals, and we didn't know what to expect. Since then, we have developed a plan, and same with the schools. They've adopted the I Love You Guys model or foundation model. And I've just done 3 of them. I did the high school, the elementary school, and the middle school within the last 3 months. And one of the things that we talk about is training with the staff, because they do these drills with the kids in the school, but what they're not doing, we get a lot of questions from staff about, well, was that the fire alarm or was that the lockdown drill? And I mentioned to them that one of the things that they need to do is they need to train their staff every time the kids are, say they're out and let's say it's a grading period or there's time where kids aren't in. Do that drill inside the school so your staff knows what they're hearing and how to respond. We also do a debrief at the end of that. But as far as the large scale events, we're just not doing those anymore because we've got a plan that we've all adopted and we're working well together. In the beginning, we did not have that. And so that's what we were learning. We were taking notes and learning how to kind of devise that plan on the same page. We still do them from time to time, but we focus on reunification because that's the piece that's going to be the hard students, how we're going to get them bussed in and out of different places. But we haven't done the large scale drills just because we've all adopted a plan that we all train on.
so you're thinking that it's not as valuable as it once was when we didn't have a plan. But all the professionals have a plan, but the new teachers and the students probably don't know a whole lot about those plans. And I don't know, I
think what I heard her say, the plan for the schools, for the students and the teachers is the lockdown drill. I mean, that is
They
the
do
part
that
that they
once a
need to
month,
roll,
yeah,
that they
yeah.
practice. And outside of that, that's really what you want the students and the teachers to be trained on, and they need to know that part of it. They don't need to know how's the police department, the fire department get determined who gets there first and who's going in with who. And, that is the part that the law enforcement and first responders and the hospitals have worked out. So that plan's in place and the professionals know that and they train on that internally and do that. But you don't have to have all the students involved and all the personnel involved
No,
like what you used
we
to
didn't have
to
any
do.
students involved in this, but, I mean, we learned so much that it seems like there are still ways that we can improve our security, and, if we don't do these things, I don't know that we know, because the lockdowns, you've got the students, you lock your door, everybody's kind of hides or gets down, turn on all the lights. That's not the same as somebody actively trying to break into your school or get into your classroom. And it was a whole different feel and different perspective. I also learned, I mean, goodness sakes. But there's so many new teachers. I don't know. I mean, the room office, and he had trouble finding us, which was good. I don't know that these new people know. Yeah. That's an option.
So that's been my job when I go. So I walk along with one of the administrators inside the school, and I've got a clipboard, and I take notes. Problem areas that I see. There are multiple classrooms in all of the schools that have multiple doors, or they're problem areas, right, where they've got multiple windows, so you can't get kids about covering one of those windows and leaving it covered, and then it's going to be the teacher or staff's responsibility to kind of craft that custom plan in those problem areas. But we're addressing that in each one of these lockdown drills that we do, and I think that's the benefit. Site agency coming in, and if they don't treat them as they're real, right, so if they're not actually locking doors, we go through, we check every door lock, and if it's open, then we're writing it down. And we've seen that where, oh well, so and so was out for a doctor's appointment, so they didn't lock their door today. And then we've also made recommendations to the school about, okay, do you have janitorial staff that comes in, and do they maybe unlock doors to get in and maybe accidentally leave it unlocked? How are you guys going to test this to make sure that the doors are locked? So we're having those conversations and discussions and debriefs after that, and taking detailed notes and making recommendations.
And your new officers, are they trained in regards to responding to some kind of a school shooting or?
Yeah, that's training that they'll receive in the academy, and then additionally, we'll issue them a set of keys for each one of the schools. We've got the electronic key card locks, and then a master key for each one of the schools. And then we'll tour that usually in the summertime. We take a look at points of entry and just getting familiar with the layout of each one of those buildings in the event that they need to respond to something like that.
Was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I came back out of retirement and taught in 3 different schools. Not once was I there when they had an emergency drill. I had 40 years of teaching experience, so I felt semi-comfortable, but not everybody does coming into that sort of situation where they're spread between buildings, and they may miss every single one of them, because I was not at any of the 3 buildings when they had an emergency drill that whole year. I know I'm feeling strongly that there are some things to learn and to train, and maybe we could just schedule it during a in-service day when the students are gone, and not, I think it was on a Saturday before or something like that, but make it a priority, and for everybody. And I also felt strongly that if we get our city council to go through one of those so that they know, I mean, everybody hears about the kids duck and cover or whatever they do, but until you've actually been in that situation where somebody's actually looking for you, it's a whole different thing, and that would be a good experience for them as well.
When that was probably the best training that I've been to with regards to active threat scenarios. And we also had Marcia Gilson had received a grant through the fire department to help pay for that. And we had a bunch of buy-in from our regional partners. We had Life Flight there. And that was, like I said, it was probably the best one that I've ever been to. And then it was realistic in that I was the bad guy at that time, and we used a long rifle with blanks, and so we were actively shooting inside of the school. And so people understand what that was going to sound like, or be very clear that it might not sound like what you think it's going to sound like, because gunshots in real life inside a building don't sound what they sound like in a
Right.
movie. You know?
Yeah.
And so it was very realistic.
It was
It was very
amazing because it was a whole different level, and
I agree.
John Bartlow was in my room and he hit his head on the desk trying to hide, and he was bleeding, and it was like crazy stuff. But it was just really educational. And
We just think that's so important, that our kids be prepared, that our
Mhm.
schools be prepared, that it's a safe place, even in situations like that that could, we hope, never occur, but that we're prepared for
yes,
them.
but you know,
Yes.
Springfield had theirs, and I mean, any day it could happen here.
Well, and one of the things that we didn't have back then when we did that drill is none of the schools had lock blocks. And I think it was probably at least 5 years or more
Right,
before we saw
right,
those. And now
right.
every school that I go into, those doors all have lock blocks. And they've also got the electronic locks as you come in. There's a breezeway where they check you in. And so we've made some
Yes.
major improvements.
I mean, all of that was very impressive once I looked back and realized everything that you did. The first 20 some years that I worked there, I didn't even lock my room at the end of the day. Everybody was honest and seemed like, I never had anything taken or broken into or anything, but it's a whole different world now. And yeah, our doors on the end of the hallways were not locked, and that's a little bone of contention if you teach out in the modular and your kid needs to go to the bathroom and they have to go through the front office. It's a pain, but anyway,
Thank you.
I'm too close to it. I
No,
think.
no, Councilor Cotter, we really appreciate that, because we are concerned about our kids. You know, they're our
For
future,
sure.
and we want them to be safe. Any other points of discussion? I would like to, if we could, to address the meeting date for our very next meeting, with calendars being so busy and so scheduled. Our next meeting as police committee chair, could we schedule and pencil in a date for that, please?
She was mentioning it very close to Chief's retirement and your swearing in, and so that
Right.
there's already quite a bit on the calendar.
So Chief Urban had us scheduling every other month before the injuries and things, but which would put us in April, which is right around that time of retirement. And would that be the 9th?
Ninth works for me. Does
April
that
9th
work
works.
for everybody, or does
Works for me.
April 9th work?
And
Day or night? Does
So-
4 o'clock time work?
yep. We'll just-
Do you want to change any of that time, or?
Good to me.
Councilor Causey, April 9th at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Right, so we will tentatively put the next committee meeting on April 9th of 2024 at 4 p.m. here at the City Hall. And if there is there any other points to be discussed?
I guess it was Christopher on his ride along and mentioned how low the crime rate is, and I do want to thank you and everybody involved for your work, because that's not the case in many places. So
No, I think we saw that on the survey too.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that we were pretty proud of.
Yeah.
That's intentional. That's not, it's not an accident. That's a lot of work, and it's a lot of following after petty crime, what other cities consider low crime that's not worth anything but a police report. We've have a long history now of not tolerating even petty crime, which leads to more severe crime, and so that's, Philomath does have that reputation. And it's good. The criminals and the bad guys out there know, and more importantly, our officers are very much attuned, and they know when that criminal element comes into town, they know that they're being watched, because officers know who they are, and they are watching. So it's a lot of work, and all the credit goes to our police department. It's a mindset, really. It is on just not tolerating anything and making sure that the bad guys know that they're being watched.
send them to Eugene, because they don't even respond for burglaries or other things, and it's like, oh gosh.
Well, it's been on the news the last little bit that in Portland, they're doing these special task force to go after, shoplifters. It's like, you don't always go after
Yeah.
shoplifters.
No.
It's like, when we get a shoplifter, I won't spill any secrets, but, yeah, we don't let those slide at all. We're following up on those to the nth degree, pulling search warrants, checking down vehicles, going into houses. We don't stop at fill out this form and we're sorry about your loss. And when you do that, it just spirals downhill. And so, again, I'm glad that we don't have to do special task force for burglary, stuff or for shoplifting. That's part of our police presence in town.
Yes.
Have you seen any homeless in the last 6 months, ever since the new law came into effect, meaning
Sleeping but not camping.
sleeping but not camping, but we haven't, visually, I'm not seeing anybody at all compared to Corvallis. And is that still the case, or are there people out there that we're just not seeing?
We have an individual that we've been dealing with for about the last month. He's been trespassed from numerous businesses. Doesn't appear to be sleeping in town. We think that he's actually sleeping out in the county, somewhere on Highway 20 or Highway 34. That's where we see him walking in the evening. But he's been coming into some of the local businesses and he's been rifling through their ashtrays or tipping them over, knocking them all out, and then picking up partially used
Yeah.
cigarettes. And so each one of those businesses has trespassed him. So we haven't dealt with him yet this week, but we've been dealing with him for about the last month or so. I don't believe he's living here in town.
It's a long walk to go out of town, though.
Nicotine's powerful.
Yeah. Well, please give the officers and your department our appreciation as city council.
I will.
We just really appreciate their hard work and keeping us and keeping the city of Philomath safe where we can walk. I was speaking with one of the business owners on Main Street, and she and her husband walk in the evenings, and she said it's really nice to be able to walk around Philomath and feel safe. And that's not the case in every city. In the evenings, if you go, you maybe don't want to walk around.
Right.
Maybe just a couple of people, and she voiced her opinion. Please let them know that we appreciate the feeling of security that we feel in Philomath. So
I will. I appreciate that.
really well.
I wonder if we should clearly go on the record as supporting an additional officer.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Well, can we do an unofficial vote, or how we vote?
Sure. You can
Okay. Those who would like to support the hiring of an additional officer for the Philomath Police Department, please raise your hand. Say aye. Vote is unanimous amongst the counselors that are here present in our meetings, so we will go forth with that.
We'll make it a priority in the budget, and if there's issues, then we'll bring that back to you, but I appreciate anybody to make that happen.
Thank you, Councilor Cosley, for that. I appreciate that. And if nothing else, we will adjourn our meeting.